The Century of Blood was a period of chaos in Essos, which lasted for approximately 1 century. It began following the destruction of the Valyrian freehold and the Doom of Valyria. The Valyrian freehold defeated the old empire of Geese and took control of the slaver cities, forced the Rhoynar into exile, and founded 8 of the 9 free cities. Braavos, the ninth and youngest of the free cities, was founded by escaped slaves from Valyria. The power of Valyria eventually encompassed the western half of Essos, ranging from the Narrow Sea to Slaver's Bay. In 102 BC, the Valyrian freehold collapsed when the Valyrian peninsula was destroyed in the Doom. Within mere hours, Valyria was gone and the freehold was destroyed. It is said that the fire and smoke was so hot that even dragons were consumed. The destruction of Valyria strongly reduced the number of dragon lords left in the known world. House Targaryen had relocated to Dragonstone at that point, and 12 years before their dragons before the Doom, thereby ensuring their survival. Some other dragon lords, those who had not been in Valyria when the Doom happened, also survived. What followed the Doom of Valyria was struggle that lasted a century. The destruction of Valyria left a power vacuum in Essos. According to history, Arion, a dragon lord who had been visiting Quor, proclaimed himself the first emperor of Valyria and raised forces from the Koharik. With his dragon and an army of 30,000 men, he marched to claim Valyria's remains, but none of them were ever seen again. Volantis, then the mightiest of the 9 free cities, laid claim to Valyria's empire. Meanwhile, the Dothraki rode out of the east, sacking and burning towns and cities in their way, leading to the destruction of several realms. As Valyria's first daughter, the Volantines regarded themselves as the rightful successors of the Dragon Lords. The so-called Tigers, aggressive Volantine nobles descended of Valyrian blood, called for war upon the other cities, taking control of Lys and Myr, and commanded the southern reaches of the Rhoyne. Volantis ruled their 2 sister cities for 2 generations. Resistance began when Volantis attempted to take control of Tyrosh. However, and in the end, all of the free cities except for Lorath either rebelled against Volantis or joined the alliance against the Volantines. Pentos gave Tyrosh aid in the resistance while Myr and Lys rebelled. Quohor and Norvos made an alliance against Volantis and destroyed much of the Volantine fleet controlling the Rhoyne at Dagger Lake. The Titan's wrath was provoked in Braavos, and the Sea Lord of Braavos sent 100 ships to Lys for further aid. Argilac Durandon, the Storm King from Westeros, led a host into the disputed lands, where he defeated an army from Volantis attempting to retake Myr. Pentos and Tyrosh also approached the last remaining Dragon Lords, House Targaryen on Dragonstone, and a young Aegon Targaryen agreed to join the alliance against Volantis. Mounted on his dragon Balerion, he flew to Lys, where a Volantine fleet was preparing an invasion, and set the fleet ablaze. When Volantis sent a fleet to reclaim Valyria, the fleet disappeared in the smoking sea. The Dothraki also attacked weakened Volantis' eastern territory. In the end, a second political party, the Elephants, seized control of Volantis. Where the Tigers had favored conquest, the Elephants favored trade and peace. After having held power for almost a century following Valyria's doom, the Tigers were displaced by the rising Elephants, and ever since, at least 2 of the 3 triarchs of Volantis have been elephants since then. While Volantis had been the most powerful of the free cities shortly after the Doom, the Century of Blood left the city broken, bankrupt, and depopulated. Fighting devastated the previously fertile disputed lands, where the free companies were born in the struggle for power. They continued to battle in the disputed lands, even in present-day history, when Tyrosh, Myr, and Lys go to war over their borders. Following the power struggles during the Century of Blood, Volantis has mostly been ruled by the elephants instead of the tigers. The rise of the Dothraki. Because of the power vacuum left by the Doom, the Dothraki came from the east and the grasslands of central Essos exploded into war. Acting on the advice given by his mother, Dosi, Khal Mengo united the 60 Khalasars and focused on the west. The tall men of the kingdom of Sarnor ignored the threat of the Dothraki and what they posed, instead attempting to use them for their own wars. Mango accepted all the tall men offered in return for his help, but took the lands they had conquered as well. The fields, farms, and towns were burned, and so these lands returned to the wild state that they had once been. The Khalasar of Khal Moro, Mango's son, destroyed Sathar, slew its men, and took its women and children to be sold as slaves. Kasath and Gornath both claimed Sathar's ruins, which resulted in conflict between the two cities. 6 years following the destruction, Kasath was destroyed as well, and Gornath followed a dozen years later. By then, Khal Moro had been slain and replaced by Khal Horo. Following his death 3 years later, his large Khalasar splintered into 12 smaller bands who continued the conquests. When the city could endure no more, the men killed their wives and children to keep them from falling into the hands of Dothraki, after which they had made one last charge. Following the fall of Mordosh, the Sarnori united against their enemy and faced the Dothraki in the tall grasses halfway Sarnath and the ruins of Kasath. The so-called Field of Crows ended in Dothraki victory, and a fortnight later Sarnath was taken and put to the torch. With the Century of Blood drawing to a close, the remaining Sarnori cities fell to the Dothraki. The last to fall was Saris, though it had been mostly abandoned by the time the Khalasar arrived. Sath is the only Sarnori city still standing today, but has been greatly diminished. The Valyrian colony Assaria fell to Dothraki, as did the Ibanese town Ibish. The inhabitants had abandoned the city. The Dothraki renamed the city Vice Arasak, meaning the city of cowards. In the Red Waste, Kathi towns and cities were also destroyed, including the city known as Vice Quasar, the small city known by the Dothraki, where a great number of slaves were taken, and the small Korthine town known as Vice Shirashi also fell to the horse lords. Temo, a Dothraki Khal, rode west to Quahar, one of the free cities. The Qohorik had prepared for the Dothraki by strengthening their walls and hiring 2 free companies. As an afterthought, they sent a man to Astapor to buy 3,000 unsullied soldiers, for which that city is famed. The Dothraki reached Quahar before the Unsullied arrived and defeated their defenses. When the Dothraki attempted to sack the following day, the 20,000 Dothraki screamers found 3,000 Unsullied defending the gates. The Unsullied withstood 18 charges, and they killed 2,400 Dothraki, including Temo. On the 4th day, the new Khal led the survivors through the gates to surrender. As a result of the 3,000 of Quahar, the city of Quahar has since been compromised of Unsullied. The Doom of Valyria and the Century of Blood were also felt in Sodrithos. Raids on Nath have since become very frequent. The Dothraki renamed the cities that they sacked and destroyed during the Century of Blood. I hope you enjoyed this video on the Century of Blood. Overall, I find it a very interesting topic, and I would love to see some sort of television adaptation or movie or something on the Century of Blood someday. Thanks, and have a great day.